you want to call your next witness?
Judge State calls Teresa Nazizan.
Hi, come on up. You can come around here. Just watch your step as you're coming up to the witness stand. And then if you don't mind, if you could put your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand for me. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Once you get seated and comfortable, can you tell us your full name and spell your last name, please?
Absolutely. My name is Teresa Nazizan. Last name Nezezon.
Okay, thank you so much. Prosecutor, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Good morning, Ms. Nazizan.
Good morning.
Where are you employed?
I am employed by the New Jersey State Police Office of Forensic Sciences DNA Laboratory.
Okay, what is your title there?
I am a Forensic Scientist 3, and I'm also the Assistant Laboratory Director.
What unit did you say you currently worked in?
I work in the DNA Laboratory.
Okay. I'd like to discuss your professional background and education with you. I'm going to show you what's been marked as S489 showing counsel. Do you recognize that?
Yes, that is my CV.
Could you tell the jury about your educational background, please?
Absolutely. I have a Bachelor's of Science in Microbiology and Immunology from the University of Rochester in Rochester, New York, and I have a Master's of Science in Forensic Science from the John Jay College of Criminal Justice in New York City.
Now, could you take us through your professional experience chronologically?
Yes, absolutely. Would you like me to speak to the jobs that I had before this, or just the current?
If you could start with your CV lists, the jobs that the first job that you took at when you graduated. So start there.
After I graduated from college, I worked in a vaccine immunobiology lab in Rochester, New York, where we worked on pathogens that cause ear infections in children. After that, when I was working on my master's degree at John Jay College, I worked in one of the labs as a laboratory assistant, doing ordering and making sure the lab functioned correctly. And after that job, I did obtain the job at the New Jersey State Police Office of Forensic Sciences.
Now, how long have you been with the New Jersey State Police?
I have been with the State Police for about 23 years.
How long have you worked in the DNA unit?
All of those 23 years.
Okay. Can you take us through the different roles and titles that you've had while you were there?
Sure. I began my career as a Forensic Scientist 1. During that time, I was mostly doing lab work and authoring of case files. I then was promoted to Forensic Scientist 2, and in that capacity, I was performing technical reviews of case files as well as lab work and authoring case files. And finally, I was promoted to Forensic Scientist 3, which is a supervisory title, and in that capacity, I still author lab reports, and I still peer review lab reports, but I also supervise a team of scientists.
Now, was there a program that you had to complete to become a forensic DNA analyst?
Yes, the New Jersey State Police Office of Forensic Sciences DNA Laboratory has a very extensive training program. It usually lasts about a year. During that time, I was required to watch case-working scientists perform all aspects of our job. I then had to demonstrate that I could perform those techniques independently. I also underwent a laboratory practical and a written exam, and finally a mock court before being certified.
Do you have to keep up with any continuing education for your profession?
Yes, we are required to complete 8 hours of continuous education training per year, but we often complete much more than that.
Okay. And did you have to take any proficiency testing?
Yes, each scientist in our laboratory has to be proficiency tested twice per year.
And how do you stand with regard to your proficiency testing?
All of my proficiency tests have been satisfactory.
Now, you indicated that you're the Assistant DNA Laboratory Director.
Yes, that's correct.
What does that role entail?
That role is a bit of a jack of all trades kind of role. I assist our laboratory director. There are a lot of administrative tasks that have to be carried out. I help with that. It could be anything from doing the meat and potatoes of what we do, like so writing up cases, reviewing, all the way up to taking care of building and maintenance issues. So.
Now, in total, over the course of your career, about how many cases have you worked on where you've processed and analyzed DNA samples?
Many. I would estimate maybe 2,500.
Okay. Now, when we're talking about cases, can a case have more than one DNA sample?
Yes, absolutely.
How many times have you testified in Superior Court with regard to the results of those DNA analyses that you've conducted?
35 times in different courts throughout the counties of New Jersey.
Okay. And do you also peer review others' cases?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And how many times have you peer reviewed cases involving DNA analysis?
Multiple, many cases that I've peer reviewed. I would say, again, it's in the thousands.
Now,
3,000. Sorry.
In the jurisdictions that you testified, actually, can you tell us, what are those jurisdictions?
It would be counties throughout New Jersey. Almost all of the counties I've testified in.
Have you ever testified in federal court?
Yes, I have, twice.
Okay. In those instances, how many times were you qualified by the court as an expert in the field of forensic DNA analysis?
In all of the times I testified, I was qualified as an expert witness in DNA analysis.
At this time, Judge, the state would seek to have this witness qualified as an expert in forensic DNA analysis.
Smart.
No idea.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, again, the same exact charge as it deals with expert testimony. You have to evaluate the expert's opinion. You evaluate that based on the information that they're relying upon, just like I've told you in the past. You would decide their credibility. You decide the facts on which that their information that they're using, whether it exists or not. Then you'll compile it all together and make that ultimate determination. So I gave you the longer version of that charge this morning. Does everybody remember that charge? Yes. Everybody is shaking their head yes, so they don't want to hear me again. This is the third time this morning, so we'll continue. You're qualified as an expert in forensic DNA analysis. Go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. Turning to the present
Can we
case,
just for 1 second take the circle off my eyeball? Did you guys put that up there?
I'm going to make you Batman.
Thank you.
Did you have occasion to perform DNA testing and analysis of certain items of evidence with regard to this case, State of New Jersey versus Sophia Caneiro?
Yes, I did.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as S414 and S490, showing counsel. Let's start with S490. If you could, do you recognize that?
Yes, that is the laboratory report that I prepared for case number C18-10138.
Okay, and is there a date on there?
Yes, the date the report issued is May 13th, 2020.
Okay, now S414, which is in front of you, do you recognize that?
Yes, that is the evidence receipt from this case.
Okay. Now, is there the same lab number on that evidence receipt as it is on your report?
Yes, there is.
That ends in 38?
Yes.
If you could, can you tell us what the items are that are listed on S414?
S414 lists item 28. These are laboratory items, our laboratory items. Item 28, 29, 30, 31, and 32.
And does it say what each of those items are?
Yes, it does.
Can you please indicate each one?
Absolutely. Item 28 is one envelope containing biological specimens, question DNA swab of reddish stain from doorframe in between foyer and kitchen of 15 Willowbrook Road, Colts Neck, New Jersey. Item 29 is one envelope containing biological specimen, question DNA sample, scraping of reddish stain from doorframe in between foyer and kitchen of 15 Willowbrook Road, Colts Neck, New Jersey. Item 30 is one envelope containing biological specimen, question DNA swab of reddish stain from the south side of the kitchen island of 15 Willowbrook Road, Colts Neck, New Jersey. Item 31, one envelope containing biological specimen, question DNA swab of reddish stain from the lower kitchen cabinet on the north side of the kitchen next to the garbage disposal at 15 Willowbrook Road, Colts Neck, New Jersey. Item 32 is one envelope containing a questioned DNA swab of reddish stain from the pull-out drawer just below the sink on the north side of the kitchen at 15 Willowbrook Road, Colts Neck, New Jersey.
Now, of those items, which, if any, did you perform DNA testing on?
Our laboratory performed testing on item 28.
Okay, and specifically, can you tell us about the testing that you performed and your results, if any?
Yes. So item 28, a portion of that would have come into the DNA laboratory, and we would have performed the 4-step process to obtain a DNA profile on that item. So those 4 steps, they include extraction, quantification, amplification, and detection. And we were able to obtain a DNA profile from item 28.
Okay, and what, if any, comparisons did you make with regard to that profile?
The STR DNA profile of Sophia Caneiro matches the STR DNA profile obtained from item 28-1.
Right, now, what, if any, statistic did you assign this?
The calculated frequency of the STR DNA profile is 1 in at least 2.18 million for randomly selected unrelated individuals.
I'll take that back. Yes. Thank you. I'm going to show you what has been marked as S491 and S416. And I'm showing council. We could start with S491. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
What is that?
This was a supplemental report that I issued in case number C18-10138.
What is the date on there?
The date the report was issued is July 7th, 2023.
Okay, and what are the items that are listed that you tested in your report?
So item 6-1, which is a portion of a swab of a knife blade, and item 8-1, which is a portion of a swab of a knife blade.
Okay, and specifically, do those correspond to items on S416?
Yes.
Okay. When you say you performed testing on there, can you just tell us what you did specifically for each of those?
Yes. So each of these items was subjected to the first and the second step of the 4-step process. So the first step, extraction, the second step, quantification. And quantification is when we're trying to figure out how much DNA we have on an item. So when we got to the second step of the 4-step process with both items 6-1 and 8-1, it was determined that these samples had a quantification value of 0. So basically, there was no DNA on either of these items. No detectable DNA on either of these items.
Thank you. I'll take this. Judge, I have nothing further.
Mark, across.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
So S414, I think, was the evidence receipt in this case for items that included item 28.
I believe that's correct, yes.
Okay, and then that was delivered to your lab on February 25th of 2020.
I'm sorry, I would need S414 to just verify that date, but I believe that it came in around that time.
What do you think?
This is S414.
Thank you. Yes, these items came into the laboratory on February 25th, 2020.
Okay, thank you. And there's also a synopsis a brief history of examination requested within this item, S414, and it relates to, obviously all these items came, it's your understanding, from 15 Willowbrook Road in Colts Neck?
Yes, I believe that was scene one.
Okay. And the incident date for this case was November 20th of 2018?
Forgive me.
Yeah,
May I
no,
refresh?
no, sure.
Recollection. Yes, November 23rd, 2018.
Okay. Well, that's what's listed there, right?
Yeah, yes, that's what's listed.
Now, in between then and February 25th of 2020, do you know where these envelopes of specimens were?
I do not know where in the chain of custody those items were.
Do you know the date on which these were collected initially?
No, I do not.
You have no idea.
No.
So, I mean, your understanding is these swabs were taken from places at the Willowbrook Road property where there was a question as to whether the items in question had blood on them, right?
I knew that they were sampled from 15 Willowbrook Road.
Okay. Okay. And specifically, the evidence received contained, it lists envelopes containing biological specimens, right?
Correct.
And it says questioned after each of them, and what's questioned is DNA swab of reddish stain. Right.
Right. The questioned is a designation that we give to samples that are not known reference samples. So samples from, from myself, somebody's person.
Okay. Right. But all of these are, what comes after question is the phrase reddish stain from various locations. Right.
Correct.
And these were not collected by you, right?
That's correct.
They were collected by a detective, presumably.
Possibly, presumably.
For reasons that you do not know, thought were areas of potential evidentiary interest, right?
Yes.
But you don't know how long these reddish stains existed on these items before they were swabbed by the detectives, right?
That's correct.
And it could have been a day, it could have been weeks, right?
That's correct.
It could have been months,
That's
it could have
possible.
been over a year.
That is possible.
What we do know is that DNA does not last forever on items in the world, right? It degrades over time.
It can, and that depends on many factors.
And DNA can degrade in terms of its quantity on an item, right?
Quantity is how we would measure it, but it will degrade so that we can't analyze it. The DNA will still be there, but it'll be fragmented so that we can't analyze it.
And the longer a period of time that goes by, the longer the opportunity or possibility exists for that DNA to degrade, right?
That is possible. Again, there are many factors that go into how long DNA can persist on an item.
Sure. I think that it's probably true that, we know that you don't get to decide how things come to the laboratory, right? They come to you as they're packaged, right?
Yes.
And they come to you whenever they happen to be collected and sent, right?
That's correct.
And you're not in really any control over how long some DNA could potentially sit on an item before being swabbed, and those swabs are sent to you, right?
That's correct.
But ideally, you'd want that swab taken of an item as soon as possible in relation to an important event in the case, right?
Ideally, but I can't, again, speak to how long the DNA, specifically in this case, was sitting there and what conditions it was subjected to and whether that would cause degradation or not.
Right, right. Well, you just simply don't know, right?
That's correct.
But in the abstract, let's take ourselves away from the specific circumstances of this case for a second. In the abstract, you would want the DNA swabs to be taken and delivered to you sooner rather than later, right?
That's correct.
Because, you know, these possibilities exist for the DNA to degrade over time, right?
Again, yes.
So if we can eliminate that issue with time, we would want to do that, right?
Yes.
The results you got for item 28, I believe you said it was a match to Sophia, right?
Yes.
But then the likelihood ratio was somewhere around 2 million?
That was the random match probability, so not a likelihood.
Sorry. 2.18 million of randomly selected unrelated individuals. 1 out of 2.18 million randomly selected unrelated individuals would be expected to share the profile that you found.
Yes, that's
Okay.
correct.
Now, you did not get a full profile from item 28.
That's correct.
You got a profile where many locations, many loci did not return any information whatsoever.
Yes, there were some that did not have a result.
Right. You actually got information from only 7 of them in terms of that sample, right?
Yes, there were 7 complete loci that I could report.
7 total, complete or somewhat complete.
Yes, there were other, yes.
And so, and I guess we should say that the sample obviously appeared to be an XX sample in terms of the alleles. You believed there was a female contributor.
That's correct. Barring mutation, that was a female profile.
Right. Now, you ran this. You amplified the sample twice. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then sometimes certain things appeared in amplification 1 that didn't appear in amplification 2, right?
That's correct.
And sometimes things appeared in amplification 2 that didn't appear in amplification 1.
That's correct.
There was also, I think you also included your electropherogram results for the sample, right?
Yes.
And sometimes, it appears that the peak heights between some of these alleles that you include as part of the table are not exactly equivalent to each other.
Yes.
And so sometimes one peak for, let's say, 14 at D18S51 is higher in terms of allele 15 than it is for 14. It's over double the RFU amounts, I guess.
I don't have the information in front of me.
Okay. Okay. What would that be, though, if there was a 14, 15, and 15 was showing as those numbers beneath it are the RFUs, right?
Yes.
And what does that stand for?
Relative fluorescence unit.
And what is that? What does this mean? What is the electropherogram?
The electropherogram is a graphical representation of the DNA, so the RFUs represent how strong of a signal each peak is.
Okay.
Mr. Murray, I'm going to give the jurors a break. It's around lunchtime now, so I'm going to stop you here. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to stop you for the morning here. I didn't say anything, though, this time. Don't discuss this case, don't do any research. I'll bring you back at about 1:35. I do have one thing that I have to do during the lunch hour, so if I'm running 5 minutes.
All rise. The court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Mark Lemieux presiding.
Hey, good afternoon. Please be seated. See everybody back. Everybody have a good lunch?
Yes.
All right. Good stuff. Right. We're still. We could just get to this. You know what? Thank you. Okay, ma'am, you're still under oath, okay? Thank you. Summary when you're ready.
Thank you. So when we left off before lunch, I think we were talking about item 28-1, and that was an item that you had tested and come to a conclusion about regarding Sophia Caneiro being a match to that item.
That's correct.
Now, we were also talking about the fact that there were electroparograms from the testing that you did on that item, right?
Yes.
And I think you were in the process of explaining what the electropharogram is before we broke. So, what role does the electropharogram play in your genetic testing?
So the electropharogram is the culmination of the four-step process. That's basically the visual representation of the DNA profile.
Okay. And it's visual because we can see on the electropharogram there are at various places where the locus are tested, there can be spikes along a line that runs across the pharogram, right?
Yes.
And those spikes are associated with what is the association between a spike on the electropharogram and what's the significance for the DNA locus?
So each spike, each peak that you would see is one of the alleles at that locus. So alleles are just different copies of a gene. So we are looking at 27 locations along the chromosome. So at each location, you would expect, if there's one person's profile there, you would expect to see 1 or 2 peaks. So 2 peaks because you get 1 copy of your DNA from your mother and 1 copy from your father. So if you look at the electropharogram and at a given location you see 2 peaks, that means you got, like, say, 1 version from your mother and 1 version from your father. If you see 1 peak at a location, that means, generally, it means that you've gotten the same allele from your mother and your father.
Now that's as to an electropharogram of a person's reference sample. Right?
That's correct. That's a single source, 1 person sample.
But when we're dealing with testing items of evidence, we don't know if you're going to get a single source profile or a mixed profile back when you look at the genetic material that's on the item, right?
When we do the 4-step process, we are not sure at the end if we will get a mixture or a single source profile.
Right. And sometimes, you mentioned that sometimes there could be a single peak at a given allele, which could indicate in a reference sample that the person has inherited the same allele from both parents, right?
Right.
But in an item of evidence that's tested, if we had a single peak, that could mean, in and of itself, that could mean that there was one person who contributed, who inherited the same allele from each parent. But it could also mean that we didn't have complete information at that locus.
Yes, depending on the signal strength of the profile. So if the profile is overall a generally lower, weaker profile, yes, that can happen where you see one of the alleles from the mother or father and the other allele is not present.
There's other occasions where we might see two alleles are present at a locus. One seems to be has a higher spike, has more RFUs associated with it than the other allele.
Yes.
And I think is that something that's called height imbalance?
Yes, peak imbalances can happen, especially when you're looking, again, at a lower level sample. That's
And-
typically where you see it.
And so, if one allele, let's say, is associated with 431 RFUs, radiofluorescent units, and the other allele at the same location is associated with 207, right? Just as a general matter, obviously one allele would be coming in at less than half the RFU amount of the greater, right?
Yes, in that example.
And that would be would a height imbalance of that nature be significant?
It all depends on the profile. So if I saw that peak imbalance in a low level sample, I wouldn't be surprised. And if I thought that could be indicative of a mixture, I would expect to see evidence of a mixture in another location within that profile.
You could expect, but it in and of itself, that height imbalance could be indicative of a mixture.
At one locus, I would not hang my hat on saying something's a mixture if I saw an imbalance there.
Obviously, everybody who you had a sample from in this case, in terms of Jennifer Caneiro, Jesse Caneiro, Sophia Caneiro, and Keith Caneiro, they are all related to one another, right?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. And you had, I think in your report, you had a copy of each of their allele tables, right?
Yes, each of their references was in an allele table in my report, my case file.
Okay. And I think we, so I just wanted to show you so this is D137. Do I have this right? That's the allele table you created for evidence item 28-1?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And in this item, we're going to see that there's the original amplification, a secondary amplification, and then the consensus table?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Is this, to your knowledge, an accurate representation of what was created when you put that table together?
Yes.
Okay. Judge, I'm going to ask to publish D-137.
No objection.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, it's a little hard to see, perhaps, but when we see the first column, and that's labeled AMP1, that's the one to the left, right?
Yes.
And then the middle column is AMP2, right?
Yes.
And then on the end, we have the consensus column, right?
Yes.
Now, the consensus column is what we're doing to build your final table of results to compare to the reference samples you have, right?
Yes.
And when we look at the consensus column, we're going to see that there's a number of spaces that are left blank, right?
Yes.
Here and here along D2S5441 and D10S1248, for example, and all the way down that column consensus, we're going to see blank spaces. Right?
Yes.
And that's indicative of the fact that those are spaces where we have no information that we can use to compare against the reference sample, right?
That's correct.
So we can only rely on the information we have in terms of where you've input data into that consensus column. Is that right?
Yes, that is what I would use in my final comparison. But I have to say that if there were something in here that was not consistent with my final conclusion, if there was more information in here and it was not consistent with matching Sophia Caneiro, then that would not have been my conclusion.
Sure. I'm sure that that's true. I'm just simply pointing out that, when you do this testing, it is not the case that you're always dealing with a perfect, complete sample, and you have to make do with the sample that you get from the evidence, right?
That is true.
And you have to see if it leads you to a conclusion or if it leads you to a place where you're unable to make a determination, right?
That can happen.
Now, this is, so just looking at this, we see at D18, S51, I think you've stated a belief that this evidence shows that there's a 1415 present at that location, right?
Yes.
In AMP1, there was a 14 and 15, right?
Yes.
And in AMP2, there was just a 14. There's no 15 anymore.
Correct.
The 15's dropped off.
Yes, it's dropped out.
It didn't appear in the electropharogram results.
It may have appeared as a peak that was below our analytical threshold, but without the electropharogram, I can't say.
Okay. But either way, either it didn't appear at all, or it was so low that your lab protocols would say, don't consider it, right?
Right. The software would not consider if it was below the analytical threshold.
Because if it was, then it would have appeared as, it would have been indicated in AMP2, right?
Yes.
Okay. But even though it's not present, right, in AMP2, and it's only present in AMP1, you placed it in the consensus table. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if we go and we look at D18 in terms of the reference samples for this case, and this is S479 that was previously published. Here we can see reference samples for Jennifer Caneiro, Jesse Caneiro, Sophia Caneiro, and Keith Caneiro. Okay?
Okay.
Here we obviously see that Sophia's a 1415, right?
Yes.
And it was indicated that the item of evidence that you tested, 28-1, you concluded that at that location, that item was also displaying 1415, right?
Yes.
But because Sophia is related to her mother and father, and her mother and father are also reference samples here, we can see that her father, Keith, is a 1515, right?
Yes.
And her mother, Jennifer, is a 1314, right?
Yes.
And if there was a height imbalance at that location, you're saying, between 14 and 15, you're saying, look, that wouldn't be on its own enough for me to conclude that there was mixture, right?
Generally, yes.
But also in that sample we saw, we're missing a large amount of the data that would otherwise be testable if you had it, right?
Yes, we are missing some data in that profile.
And because we know that there were other reference samples who could have contributed to this, who are related, that relatedness amongst them could cause the sample to look like it's single source, even though it has the greater potential because of how these people are related to one another, of potentially being a mixture.
Not necessarily. Yes, that can happen, but if this were a mixture, I would expect to see evidence of that somewhere else at a different location, at more than one location.
Sure. But I think, and I'm not saying that, I'm not trying to question your conclusions about this item in particular, but what I am trying to say is that when we're looking at this random match probability, right, we're looking at this in terms of the likelihood of encountering this in a pool of unrelated individuals, right? Mm-hmm. But in the reference samples we have here, we're talking about related individuals, right?
Yes.
And that is a factor that doesn't really get encapsulated into this idea of constructing a statistic based on unrelated individuals being contributors.
In this scenario, that's right. The statistic is calculated based upon unrelated individuals.
Right. But of course we know that the reference samples here are not unrelated. They're in fact closely related to one another, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Nothing, Judge.
You can sit down. Thank you.